Hello and good day. My name is Adika, and together with my teammates, we will be presenting our Nike corporate narrative and stakeholder communication analysis. So, first of all, allow me to list a guide of topic this presentation is going to cover. First, I will begin with a brief company overview of Nike. After that, Boy will walk us through Nike's internal narrative, how the company presents itself from within. Next, Morgott will cover the external narrative, focusing on how stakeholders and the public perceive Nike. Then Sokhay will identify the key issue that rises from the gap between Nike internals and external narrative. Follow that, Mengxi and Kakara will analyze the stakeholders involved and explain their roles and concern. Afterwards, Sopeka will present our communication objective to bridge this gap and conclude this presentation. Before we begin our analysis, let's take a moment to get to know Nike as a company. Nike Incorporated is known as a global leader in athletic footwear, apparel, and equipment, operating in over 190 countries. Its core business spans sportwear and performance products while also owning Jordan's brands and Converse. Beyond product, Nike has built one of the world's most influential brand's identity through innovations, athlete partnerships, and the iconic Just Do It narrative. Nike mission is to bring inspirations and innovations to every athlete, and its vision is to remain the most authentic and distinctive sport brand. Today, Nike is also shaping conversations about performance, cultures, and sustainability. These elements form the foundations of Nike corporate narrative and influence how it communicates with both internals and external stakeholders. With this framework in mind, let's now explore Nike's internals narrative. Chiboy, all yours.
Thank you, Satika. Now we'll cover the internal narrative. When we look at Nike internal narrative, the story the company tell about itself is very clear. Nike doesn't just see itself as a sportwear brand. It presents itself as a company built on innovations, performance, empowerment, and sustainability. First, Nike emphasize innovations and performance. It's often highlight how its product help athletes reach their best potential. For example, technologies like Nike Airs and Flyknit are designed to be lighter, stronger, and more supportive. Through this, Nike positioned itself as always being at the cutting edge of sport technologies. Second, Nike talk about empowerment. The slogan "Just Do It" is more than a phrase. It reflects the belief that anyone, whether a professional or beginner, can push limit and achieve greatness through sport. Finally, Nike stresses sustainability. On its investor side, Nike point to goals such as using 100% renewable energy. Its facility and creating product like Nike Grant, which use recycled material. This show Nike want to be seen as innovative but also responsible for planet. So overall, Nike internal narrative is about being a brand that constantly innovates, empower people, and work toward a sustainable future. And this internal narrative is based for how Nike communicate outward, which lead us into external narrative. So here is the end of my part. I will pass this to Morgot.
Hi, my name is Morgot, and my part is about the external narrative, which means how people outside of Nike sees the company. So Nike promotes itself as a brand that care about innovations, empowerment, and sustainability. But when we look at the news, report, and critics, we can see some issues that makes the company, the story less convincing. So moving to the first issue is about the labor problems. For many years, Nike has faced criticisms about how workers are treated in its supplier factories. These factories are mostly in countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, and Indonesia. And reports show that the workers there often get very low wages and must work long hours. As you can see, the first picture that has shown on the screen. For example, The Guardians in 2017 report that workers and Vietnam complains about the poor conditions and unfair treatments. And this kind of report hurt Nike's image because they go against the ideas of empowerment and fairness that the company talk about in its ads. And moving to the second issue is the environment impact. Nike has many campaigns where it's talk about being sustainable and reducing waste. However, the reality is more complicated. In its own impacts report from 2022, Nike admitted that 99% of its total emission come from its supply chains and like the production and transportation of the good. This means that even though Nike is trying to show itself as a green company, its global operations still create a very big environmental impact. And critics argue that this makes its sustainability and message less believable. And moving to the last issue is transparency. The organization, such as the Clean Clothes campaigns, has said that Nike is not fully open about what happened in its factories. They point out that Nike does not share enough detail about the wages, safety, or monitoring in its supply chain. So without clear information, it is hard for the public to trust whether Nike really practice the value it advertises. So when we compare the internal stories that Nike tell about itself to the external view from report and critics, we see a big gap. Internally, Nike say it is empowering and sustainable. Externally, there are doubt about labor's environment and transparencies. And this gap is very important for us to understand because it affects how stakeholders see Nike, whether they believe in its story. And that's all for the external narrative point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now that we have heard both Nike inspiring story and criticism it faced, let's look at the key issue, the erosions of brand loyalty. For decades, Nike has been more than just a sportswear company. It has represents empowerment, innovations, and sustainability. But today, the trust is being tested. So one major concern is labor practice. In 2024, investors, including Norway's sovereign fund, urged Nike to improve factory conditions, pointing to the wage theft and another violations. Nike management rejected, and the proposal and the shareholder voted down. For many consumers, this raised a doubt about whether Nike truly support fair treatment of workers. So next is sustainability is another issue. Nike in 2023 impact report highlighted progress in reducing emissions and waste, but NGOs note the report and exclude for largest supply chain footprint. Add this to the concern, Nike led nearly a third of a sustainability staff last year, which make people question how serious the company really is about long-term commitment. This concern matters, and because brand loyalty rely on authenticity, customer, investor, employee expect action to match the promise. If they see a gap between the Nike says and what it does, their confidence weakens. And once loyalty erodes, it's difficult to rebuild. So ultimately, this issue is not whether Nike inspire, it certainly does. The issue is that loyalty is fading, and unless Nike take stronger and more consistent actions, its long-term reputations and leadership in the industry and could be at risk. And now I will pass it to Mengxia to continue it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sok-heng. Now that we have established the key issue that it is the erosions of brand loyalties, let's examine how this directly impacts the most critical stakeholders, such as customer, employee, and shareholders. Customers are the cornerstone of Nike reputation and the most critical stakeholders because their loyalty directly affects the company's success. They care not only about product quality, but also about values like sustainability, ethical practices, and authenticity. As my team has covered, Nike advertises itself as a sustainable brand, but critics and stakeholders have accused the company of greenwashing. This contributes to the erosions of brand loyalty, which directly impacts customers. They lost the emotional connection that once keep them loyal. They may feel disappointed or even betrayed and question whether the brands reflect the values they care about. Employee are another vital stakeholder group because they influence both Nike perceptions and business operations. Employees want to feel proud of the company they represent and confident in its missions. When Nike brand loyalty erodes, it can significantly affect them, such as moral decline, stress and frustration increase, and uncertainty about the company ability can arise. Employees who face constant customer disappointment or perceived misalignment between promises and actions may become disengaged, reducing collaboration, innovations, and productivity. To fully understand the scope of this issue, it is also important to consider shareholders, who are closely tied to both brand perceptions and business outcome. I will now pass it to Kakade to discuss with the shareholders.
So thank you, Maxius. Let's now turn our attention to the shareholder, which is the third key group we will discuss. So basically, shareholders are extremely important because they are the people who invest their money into the company. What they really care about can be summed up into main things. First, the company profitability, meaning Nike ability to make consistent profit. And second, the long-term reputation of the brand. So if Nike lose their customer loyalty, this directly affects sales, and when sales fall, profit also decline. And when people profit go down, shareholders feel that impact immediately. So for example, according to the AP News, Nike One experienced a major drop of about 24% in 2024. This was a very significant decline, and it clearly shows how strongly investor confidence is connected to the public perception of a brand loyalty and overall performance. So this example makes it clear that shareholders are not just looking at numbers, they are watching closely to see whether Nike can rebuild their trust with its customer and protect the brand for the long-term growth. So now, when we step back and look at the bigger picture, shareholders, along with customer and employee, are the three most important stakeholder groups. They have the power to influence the company, the legitimacy to demand actions, and the urgency that made their concern impossible to ignore. That is why they are called definitive stakeholder under the salient models. But here are the challenges. If Nike does not respond to their expectations, the consequences could be very serious. The company risks losing credibility, damaging its global reputation, and facing even more financial risks in the future. And on the other hand, if Nike communicate openly, show measurable progress, and ensure that its actions truly match its value, then it has a chance to turn the situation around. So by doing this, Nike can win back their trust, rebuild its credibility, and prove the shareholder and the public that its commitments are real and meaningful. So in short, by taking a shareholder concern seriously and showing that it is truly committed to protecting brand loyalty, Nike can move forward and with a stronger support, greater market confidence, and more sustainable path for the future growth. So here's the end of my part. I would like to pass it to my teammate to continue our presentation. Thank you.
Now let's talk about communication objective, and I'm gonna be talking about Nike and the gap between its brand story and its reality. So as we all know, Nike has created one of the most powerful brand story in the world, which at its advertisement highlight athletic and empowerment, creating its world famous line, the Just Do It, which make millions of people believe in themselves. However, in reality, the company has faced criticism regarding labor condition or sustainability and fairness, which make a very big disconnect between its branding itself and the actual state. So to close this gap, Nike needs one clear message is the same passion we put into athlete, we also put into people, communication, community, and the planet. So by turning that message into action mean four things. So first is transparency is to share honest, easy to understand progress on labor condition and sustainability. Second is to show real action, expand eco-friendly product line and guarantee fair treatment for all workers. Third is to empower a community, which invest in grassroots sport, youth program, and equality initiative. Last but not least is consistency, making sure that inspiring campaign we see on social media actually match what Nike is actually doing behind the scene. So in conclusion, as my teammates has briefly each of their point, we can conclude that Nike can reinforce its reputation and gaining customer trust by focusing on their main stakeholder and committing to transparency communication. That is all for our point. Thank you for your attention.